Let's give him a warm welcome, Pat McManamon.
Thank you, Tom. I thought we had an agreement that you were not going to go through that whole list, but I appreciate it. It was you did it well, and you made me sound so much more important and accomplished than I actually am. So I'm honored to be here with everybody, and thank you for inviting me. I see a number of familiar faces, and I'm glad to see so many of you, some of you that I've known and actually have worked with in some cases, and others that look like you guys are all a professional group that I hope to get to know you more and better as we proceed. So as Tom mentioned, my business is called Sandler Sales or Sandler Training, and our main focus is on sales management, sales process, customer care. And so knowing the demographic of this group, I needed to talk to Tom to say what really might be the best impact topic that we would talk about, because if I focused only on sales or sales management, that may miss a few people. So what I decided to do was to talk about where we are in today's society moving forward. And by that, I will say, I would love to say that I have the answers for some of the real challenges that we've got, but I want to just pick on the particular aspect of the fact that right now there's a lot of keyword being uncertainty. And the uncertainty that exists out there is coming to us in so many different platforms, so many different venues, that it really could cause us to feel doubtful about the future. It could cause us to feel fearful about the future. It could actually cause us to really not want to proceed. So I'm going to challenge you as leaders, as members of the Rotary. I know that you've got a leadership and a servant mindset. So I want to share with you some thoughts that will hopefully help you be the leaders that you are, to be the beacon of light for the rest of the people around you. In order to do that, what I'm going to suggest is that we need to be intentional about our actions and about our thoughts. And this is going to be a shameless plug, because at the end, I'm going to tell you about the book that I wrote, which is called The Intentional Sales Manager. So it's not by mistake that I'm using that keyword intentional. But I want to focus on being intentional about a number of different elements in our life so that you can, again, set the course for those around you to accomplish and be better and to get through this time of unrest and uncertainty that we're dealing with coming out of this thing called a pandemic. Okay? So with that, I'm going to attempt to share my screen and see if that, in fact, will work. And so far, it looks like it's moving in the right direction. And there we go. So I'm just going to ask Patty to confirm, do we have the opening slide up?
Yes, you do.
Thank you. Okay. So as I said in the intro, the intention here, and oh, by the way, just want to be clear, Tom said that I had about 2 hours to go through this. Is that right, Tom Rainey?
Was it nice try, Patrick. I've got a big hook. It reaches through Zoom, so yeah. But you're, I think you've got plenty of time then.
I'll try and do 20 minutes then. It was either 2 hours or 20 minutes. I wasn't clear. But I can probably fill enough space on either one.
Good. 20 in questions, and that sounds great. Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to need some volunteers here. So I did write some names down. So I will ask for people. I see that Larry's not going to participate, but I'm going to ask some people to volunteer to be readers along the way in order to make this as interactive as possible. And then as President Rainey said, there will be time for questions at the end. Not sure that I will have the answers, but in a typical sales fashion, I can always make something up. All right. So with that, can I get somebody to volunteer to read the first definition of what is it to be intentional based on the context that we have here? And I'm going to say, let's see, Jacob, would you mind taking your mask off and reading the definition of being intentional?
Done with intention or on purpose, intended, pertaining to the capacity of the mind to refer to an existent or non-existent object.
Thank you very much. And so we're going to tie the concept and the definition of being intentional with the concept and definition of success. So can I get Charlie, would you mind reading the definition of success for us?
Pat, I just saw Charlie drop off, but I'll read it for you. Definition of success: the accomplishment of one's goals, and for you to decide.
Well done. Thank you. Appreciate that, Tom. So the accomplishments of one's goals is for us to decide. So what we need to understand, and there's a part of our brain that takes in all kinds of data that's fed to us through the world. There's an element, it's called reticular activation, if you want to know the scientific term for it, but it talks about understanding that the brain can only take in so much information. And so what will happen to our brains is that we will be predisposed to look for supporting data that validates and verifies the information we're looking for. So as we talk about being intentional, I want you to think about that as how our brain works, because we need to control and manage the thoughts and data that's going into our brain, because in the absence of that, the things that are going into our brain will be things that will most likely not move us forward. It will either cause us to think negatively or think backwards, okay? So keep that in mind as we progress. So let's talk about some of the things. These are a list of things that you can be intentional about. And I'm going to challenge you at certain points throughout this talk to just write down something that you're going to be specifically intentional about, the specific action you will take. And that way it'll make the best use of your time to have me rambling and interrupting this otherwise productive Rotary meeting. Fair? So first thing I want you to think about is living your day by design, not by default. Now, what does that mean? Living our day by design means that you start the day with a plan, the things that you need to accomplish in order to achieve what you have defined to be successful. A lot of times people will stay busy throughout the day, putting out fires, dealing with the challenges of life, and at the end of the day feel totally exhausted, totally spent, but they don't feel like they've advanced their cause any because they were dealing with other people's problems. The reason that happens oftentimes is that we have not been intentional about saying what activities, what actions we need to do on a daily basis in order to be successful based on our definition of success, okay? So defining the specific activities and behaviors that'll make you successful is a key, in writing those out or charting those out at the beginning of the day will help you have a roadmap towards success. And this is different. I just want to be clear. This is different than having a to-do list. Because if you think about the things that are on your to-do list, they are oftentimes the things that are accomplishing other people's goals and challenges and things you owe to them. But when the year is done and you have looked back and said, was I successful this year? The fact that you cleaned out your email box and you got somebody a report that they asked you for, or you were able to resolve a customer conflict, that's really not what might be considered successful. That might be part of the job for sure, but it's not what you would consider to be necessarily successful, okay? So again, live your day by design rather than by default. Be intentional about that. Next is be intentional about setting both personal and professional goals. Make sure that you have your goals in writing, an accomplished by date, and what those goals will do is they provide clarity to our subconscious about what we need to be focused on. And the subconscious is a very powerful thing. In the absence of anything, unfortunately, the subconscious will go towards the negative or the doubtful, but we can actually manage the subconscious by putting in positive things and positive outlooks in order to advance our cause and have a better impact on the world around us. Next is make sure that you're intentional about being a continuous learner. There is a tremendous amount of resources out there available to all of us, whether it be podcasts, books, videos, TED Talks, classes, the list goes on and on. But in my experience, I've been doing this 22 years, and unfortunately I have seen where business owners, managers, business leaders get to a point where they have stopped learning. They almost have a air about them that says, I have arrived. I have no more capacity to learn or grow. And so therefore I'm done. I'm just going to stay right here. So I want you to challenge yourself to say, what have I done recently? What do I do on an ongoing basis to ensure that I am a continuous learner? Whether you are 22, 42, 62, or beyond, what are you doing regularly to be intentional about being a continuous learner? So I'm going to give you 30 seconds just to write a couple things down about what you have done or what you currently do, because what you have done may remind you to say, I used to do that and it really was helpful and it really worked. I wonder why I stopped doing it. So take 30 seconds and write down some things that would be helpful for you to remember to be a continuous learner. What are some actual actions you can do? All right, moving on. Next thing, and this has to do with relationships and how we look at other people. This, I think, could really change the world if we allowed it to happen. This thought comes from a woman that used to run Pepsi, and her name escapes me, but I think it's the first name is Nadja. Anyway, someone asked her one time during an interview, what do you attribute your success to in your career? And she said, my guiding principle throughout my life is to always assume positive intent. Meaning, how do I look at other people? So the first thought process that she said that she has, and what I'm encouraging you to have, is assume positive intent in everyone around you and everyone we meet. Until they prove otherwise, have them prove that they are not worth you assuming positive intent from them. If we give them that chance, I think we will find ourselves being able to break through some major stereotypes and some things that cause us to assume things about people that may not be true. And maybe if they are true, if we understood the backstory, then we'd be more forgiving of why they're acting that way, whatever, okay? So assuming positive intent also allows us to take ownership of the relationship, of the communication. It helps us to avoid blame and self-deception. We've all heard that over the years that oftentimes the faults that we find in others are really shortcomings that we have in ourselves, and we're just able to see it in others much more clearly because we know that that's the problem. The problem is starting with us. So understanding that self-deception is a big challenge that we have in most communication and interactions. And so starting by trusting others until they give us reason to not trust others is a good way to start a relationship. So being intentional about assuming positive intent is another challenge. Next is make sure that you're intentional about revealing your why. Revealing your why. Your subconscious mind can be a powerful tool, as I mentioned. So make sure that you understand not only what you want to accomplish, what you want to get done, but also take the time to describe why. Why is that important to you? Why is that important to your company? Why is it important to your career? Why is it important to those around you, your family, whatever it is, it's important. But if you attach the why to the what, meaning your goal, it gives you that much more fuel to accomplish said goal, okay? Knowing your why or your purpose gives you the perseverance when stuff happens, because guess what? As you all know, stuff does happen. You know, Mike Tyson said everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? So we all have plans, we all proceed, we all go into something with great vigor, and then we run into a brick wall. We need to have that added fuel to help us to persevere through that. Okay, be intentional about using a mentor or coach to navigate decisions and challenges. So just a heads up, I'm going to challenge you to write down, who is your manager or mentor or coach today? I don't care where you are in your career. Who do you turn to for professional guidance and advice? Somebody that will shoot you straight and tell you whether or not you're out of bounds, you're going the wrong direction, or at least allow you to think through something. Who is your mentor or coach? And if you don't have one, who should be your mentor or coach? Okay. With a mentor or coach, we're able to help implement our best practices by having a sounding board. We maintain a proper perspective on life and on specific challenges. That mentor or coach can maybe help us look at something a little bit differently. And then it also helps us to leverage the experience and the wisdom that they may have that we may not have had. So if we can benefit from their challenges and mistakes and problems that they've had and shortcut that, that's a life hack that I think we all could benefit from. So I'm going to give you 15 seconds to write down a name or two of people that could be a mentor or coach to you. All right, moving on. In order to be successful, we need to be willing to get out of our comfort zone, to take risks, to do things we haven't done before. In order to do that, we need to be willing to be held accountable, which is supported by having discipline. And that accountability suggests that we're always going to deliver on our commitments, especially to ourselves. If you look at it, oftentimes people will do more for others, meaning show up when they say they're going to, or deliver something that they're going to. They will do that more so for others than they will for themselves. If you look at it on your calendar sometimes, you'll see you've got a meeting with Sally at lunch. You're busy and life has been hectic that day, but you're not going to stand her up. So you go to that meeting with Sally for lunch, even though it's not convenient, the timing isn't right, whatever. But yet, if you got a similar item on your calendar, maybe it's that you are going to take 30 minutes and learn a new software program. Maybe take you 35 minutes, maybe, but learn a new program or listen to a podcast. Oftentimes we will allow those type of things to slip because it's ourself. So point there is, make sure that you are as accountable to delivering and making good on the commitments you make to yourself or ourselves as we are with others. Okay? And then wrapping up, I want you to be cognizant of something that we call, from the sales perspective, is pay time and no pay time. Recognizing that each of us has, throughout the course of our days, no pay time activities. And I just gave a listing of some examples of things, and I don't want to, this oftentimes causes some confusion. This is by no means saying that this is unnecessary or it's not part of the role, but it's just a recognition that these are the things that can, if left to our own devices, and unless they're guarded, these things in the no pay time category, and the list is much greater than what I have listed there, those things could literally take up our full day, our full week, our full month, and cause us to feel very busy. And so what I would want you to do is, in your particular role, your particular company, look at things that are what we would consider pay time activity, things that will help move the needle from a strategic perspective or a tactical perspective, that actually are out of your comfort zone, that are things that do not happen naturally. You have to be intentional about them. So in the world of sales, prospecting might be one of those things that people don't do naturally, but yet they know on paper they need to do it in order to grow the business or grow their territory. So from an individual perspective, a pay time activity might be being intentional about developing new skills, things that you haven't done before. I'll confess to myself or tell on myself that technology is certainly not one of my strong suits. Patty unfortunately got to live that firsthand, but it's something that I think that we're going to be seeing is going to be definitely part of the future. These Zoom meetings are not going to go away in total. They're going to be a new tool that we can use, but they are not going to go away in total. So the better we can get at using these, leveraging this technology, the better off we're all going to be. But taking the time to learn it is something that needs to be what we would consider pay time activity. So attending sales meetings might be another example. How many sales meetings do you need to attend in order to be successful? Praising employees and coworkers. If you're a leader within your organization, how many of you make sure that you have a concerted effort of reaching out to your salespeople or to any of your employees and making sure that you praise them for a job well done? It's easy for us to gravitate towards when there's a gap in their performance versus what we expected, and we jump on them there. But we also need to build the bank on how do we make sure that we're building up enough credibility and trust with them by giving them praise when they do something right, that we give them the accolades so that when we do have to give them corrective advice or corrective action, they will embrace it. And finally, just one other thought is just customer meetings or add-ons would be examples of pay time activity. So on your own time, I would challenge you to identify what is pay time activity. If you were talking to a younger you, a replacement of you, somebody that's brand new on the job, and they were coming into the exact same position you were doing, what would be the top 3 or 5 things that you would tell them while all the rest of this stuff is going on? Make sure you pay attention to doing this, and make sure you make the effort to doing these type of activities. What would those 3 to 5 things be? So one last thing about this pay time versus no pay time activity. You can see at the bottom, there's a risk continuum. And when you look at the things that are on a no pay time activity, subconsciously, the risk seems very low. Reading emails, doing research, checking on project status, internal meetings, there's not much of a possible rejection or failure in what no pay time activity tends to be. Now, we also need to recognize that on a pay time activity, there's where we're taking some risks. We're doing some things that are out of our comfort zone. We're doing some things that don't necessarily come naturally. So unless we're intentional about doing pay time activity, our subconscious will take us to doing no pay time activity. And again, the list is only intended to be a sample, knowing that you guys are all in many different industries and different roles within your companies. Just recognizing the concept of no pay time activity and pay time activity and bringing that back into how you manage your time will help you be more successful and be that beacon of light and growth for the people around you. So with that, I will just wrap it up with, I encourage you, by the way, the book that I wrote, it just came out in early January. The Intentional Sales Manager has just recently been released on Audible. And so if you are not a member of Audible, you can sign up and get it for free, or some of you might have credits on Audible, so you can also get that for free. So with that, I will pass it to probably Tom to just see if you want me to just jump off because I've insulted everybody, and it's happened before, so I get it, or unless there's any questions.
I'm sure there must be questions. And so Pat, can you see the chat in front of you to be able to field those yourself, or do you need us to do that for you? Let's look and see.
Yeah, the chat feature is kind of hiding on me.
So one question from Steve Madden is, great job, Pat. I've actually gone through your training many years ago. And his question is, during this time of in-person challenges, what's an effective activity to establish warmth in a cold contact situation?
Oh, great question. creativity is at its as at a premium in today's environment. So looking at ways to be creative and getting out of the routine of just saying, let's jump on a phone call or let's jump on a Zoom platform or whatever other platform, and figuring out ways to maybe send I got to give credit to somebody. I don't remember where I heard it from, but one organization is setting up lunch meetings with their prospects and customers, and they are actually sending the lunch to their office, and then they are getting on a Zoom call and they are having lunch together, but they're actually buying them lunch and sending it to them, as an example. That's just probably one of many examples, but getting out of the box and being creative about how do you connect with people, recognizing what they're going through, what you're going through is probably not too different. And so just understanding that, you know, for some of us, the thought of another Zoom call is the equivalent of going out and jumping in Larry's Lake, even if it is only a foot deep. You might want to do that just because it just seems like, oh. So how do you jazz it up and recognize that when you're on a Zoom call, here's something I'll just throw in, this is an added bonus. When you're on a Zoom call, recognize that it's very close to being live and in person. And so I have literally seen people that were in what we'll call a selling opportunity, where they were actually listening to the prospect and they had their hand on their face and they were just nodding up and down because they truly were focused, but the body language was saying, I would rather be anywhere else in the world than on this call. And that's what we need to be cognizant on being on these calls, is that your image is being portrayed by whoever is speaking and your colleagues. So having a professional stance in that is important.
Undeniably. I mean, I had mentioned to you earlier that, you know, I was a child of IBM, and my dad helped run the IBM training school out in Dallas back in the day. And, you know, learning how to sell, I mean, you can only have so much within you that can be developed. But, you know, if you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to be able to make it happen. So, and is that, and did we just get a bit of a format of your book that we see here? Was that a bit of an overview today?
No, this was just kind of a spin-off of using the word intentional about some of the other elements. The book is really more of a parable about a sales manager that has an underperforming sales team, and he's got all the reasons why they're underperforming. This person doesn't do this, this person doesn't do that. So ultimately he needs to recognize that it starts with him. And then through the process of enlightenment, then he realizes that if he wants change, he's got to make the change himself. So it gives some insights as to how that manager needs to change. And then as a result, how does he help change his people?
Got it. So, hey, so Pat, can you clear your screen, do you think, since I can't see anybody else who's on that?
So stop share.
I'm getting right there. We go.
Good.
So, thank you. So, does anybody else have any questions for Pat before I thank him very much? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Barry.
No, it's really more of a comment, and I know that will surprise everybody that I have a comment, but it has to do with relationships and the importance of maintaining existing relationships and gaining new ones. And of course, one of the things that we do is we develop relationships through Rotary, and it's something that my wife Cindy and I have been very privileged to do beyond our club and beyond our district. But in terms of and I'll just use Rotary as an example, because of personal relationships developed through Rotary, when we made a banking relationship change within the last year, that came prominently into play. And it's worked out very well. And I would just simply encourage everybody to remember that, particularly in this day and time when we're so frequently remote from people, we don't have that personal face-to-face time, that it's important to stay connected, whether it's through an organization like Rotary or religious organizations or sports or whatever it is, because I think that means a lot to us individually, as well as if you're still in business or a profession, can be a real plus for you. So enough said.
Thank you, Barry. Good points.
Anybody else have any other questions for Pat today?
Tom, there was a question in chat, is that about the book itself? It's available in hardcover or softcover version on Amazon. And I think Audible is also available through the Amazon link as well.
As Jacob pointed out, good quarantine reading for people who are running out of things to do, if nothing else, right?
Exactly.
All right, very good. Thank you very much, Pat.